5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I followed it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, podcast listeners. You have found your way to another action-packed edition of Rank and Review. This is your host and I'm Canadian Larry Parsons, and with my regular guest Lee Beckmann, we're going to do another Director Masterclass episode. But interestingly, in spite of the fact that these films are all done by great filmmakers, none of these movies are what we call essential. In fact, I'm going to call them the inessentials. So we're doing a weird list here, and I hope you enjoy it. And I hope if you had feedback to send me, you could do that at rankandreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. The website's rankandreview.ca. And please tell your friends about the show. If you've listened to the show before, you should go in knowing, as usual, there will be spoilers, and there will be coarse language. But that's how we do. Thank you for listening to Rank and Review. Let's get to it. Welcome to another enthusiastic, fun-filled, and educational episode of Rank
No exit.
Yeah. Our regular guest and sometime champion, who knows, where this is going to be an episode to be dropped in the future.
Yeah.
And for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
As much as this is a horror movie director masterclass episode,
Yes.
I think that a fitting subtitle would be Non-Essentials.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We have 6 movies from
Yeah.
6 interesting directors.
Yeah.
But not all necessarily hitting at peak form. A lot of
Yeah.
these are like little baby, just sort of figuring things out movies.
Yeah.
And the horror genre is one of the more easy ones to turn a profit on.
Yes.
So a lot of legit filmmakers will start in either, skin flicks or horror flicks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you'll have heard of a lot of these directors. Oliver Stone, Wes Craven, Francis Ford Coppola, John Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that we know. Anybody heard of James Cameron?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of real big names here.
Yeah.
But the movies aren't big. But
Yeah.
I think it's interesting for movie nerds like you and I, and presumably somebody who looked at this list and included Deadly Friend and said, yes, I want to fill my ears with that. It's for a very niche, specific audience. It's for horror completists. It's for,
I think the subtitle of this episode should be "In the Beginning,"
Yes.
because a lot of these are sort of like this is their first little baby films. They're learning here.
Yeah, and so a lot of times when it's director masterclass, I say you'll be probably hard on them.
Yeah.
In this case, I'll be hard on some of them. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
but I'm gonna use softer touch with this. But usually in a given episode of Rank and Review, there'll be a few movies where I would say, if you like the genre, you should get around to watching it.
Yeah.
And sure, if you're curious to check out Dementia 13,
Yep.
feel free. But it is not essential. It's not something that you need to see. Right?
I think really this is like for completists.
Yeah.
Is really the kind of the general theme of this movie is like if you were a nerd completist where you need to see all of the filmmakers' art,
Yeah.
then this is an episode for you.
Yeah.
And again, because this is the one where it's a bit of an endurance test. Like some of these films are unique disasters, or they're like films with training wheels.
Yeah.
But Yeah, this is seeing, very talented film auteurs.
Or who would someday become auteurs.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing is that, like I was talking with Francis Ford Coppola,
Yeah.
this is pretty easy. This 1960s, Roger Corman produced, ultra cheapy. Yeah, we can take pot shots at this. But a few years ago, he made an utterly confounding and pretentious vampire movie called Twixt.
Never saw it.
Which I think could also be on this list of,
Really?
What was going on?
Yeah.
Only that movie doesn't have the excuse of being at the beginning of his career.
Yeah.
So anyway, we can talk a little bit about where they went from here, the ups and downs of their careers, and yes, we'll talk about some movies that are interesting, if inessential.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to say by way of introduction before we get into this?
Not too much. It's glad to be back. Good to be here. The crown is still mine.
Hopefully.
That's true. I was sort of thinking, I can't believe I had this much time and energy to think about this. We should get a belt for the current champion, and the kind that sort of spins in the middle, but instead of that the WWE icon, we can get some sort of maybe something like that. That's what I sort of thinking is that so whoever is the current gets passed down this belt. There should be.
I'll melt down that gold statue of myself and
there you go.
Make it into a belt for you.
Yeah.
Well, who knows? I say, we're kind of seeding this episode. This is going to be one that will drop sometime in the future.
Yeah.
So maybe you're the champion, maybe you're not.
I know.
But at the time of this recording, out of respect, our champion, Lee Beckmann.
There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen.
There you go.
The 6 movies that we are going to be talking about today are from Neil Jordan, The Company of Wolves. I think that's the only one that I didn't mention in the introduction already.
Yep.
From James Cameron, Piranha 2, The Spawning.
Yep.
From Oliver Stone, The Hand. From John Carpenter, Someone's Watching Me.
Yeah.
From Wes Craven, Deadly Friend.
Woof.
And we'll finish it out with... What are we finishing it out with? What did I miss?
You've got... I can't believe you eat Piranha 2. You've got The Hand. You've got Deadly Friend. You've got Someone's Watching Me. Company of Wolves. Oh, Lord. We're unprofessional. Ladies and gentlemen.
What did we watch for this podcast?
This is embarrassing. Oh, wow. This has not started well.
I had them all out.
Don't you dare say apocalyptic.
We just talked about it. We just talked about 5 of the 6.
This is embarrassing.
Where is my short-term whatchamacallit?
It's not... All the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Dementia 13 was the one we didn't mention.
Wow.
So the 6 movies
We're
that we're
going to
talk
talk
about
about are... Here we go.
Dementia 13 from Francis Ford Coppola.
Thank you.
From Neil Jordan, The Company of Wolves.
Yada.
From John Carpenter, Someone's Watching Me.
Somebody's watching me.
From Oliver Stone, The Hand.
Yep.
From Wesley Craven, Deadly Friend.
He's Wesley now. He's reached that level of comfort where he's Wesley.
And of course, Piranha 2, The Spawning,
Yeah.
from James Cameron. We managed to remember all 6 of the movies.
I'm so proud
all
of
at the
us.
same
I'm so
time.
proud of us.
Sleek, fierce, savage, deadly. The Piranha. For centuries, nature's most ferocious killer. Until now. The new breed is here. Faster, more ferocious, and infinitely more deadly. Piranha 2.
It's tremendous jaw pressure. It's sheared cleanly through bone in places.
It's here. It's alive. And it's multiplying.
We spliced in genes from different species to create the ultimate killer organism.
It lives in the depths of the sea, but it can strike anywhere.
Loretta, what is
So look, you know I love Piranha.
Yeah.
And I know you love Piranha.
Yeah.
I'm not as big on Piranha 2 The Spawning, but I think you'll find that I'm not going to be as hard on Piranha 2 The Spawning as I am on maybe some of the other movies.
As well as you shouldn't, actually.
It's another one of these things where you would say to somebody, is it a good movie? No.
Yeah.
Is it an entertaining movie?
Yeah.
It holds your attention. It's goofy. It's stupid. It's kind of sleazy. And it's kind of amazing that it's directed by the guy who would go on to bring us Titanic and Avatar.
Well, I'm gonna just stop you right there and sort of do a little course correction for you. Part of the reason why this film is the way it is Cameron actually only did about 2.5 weeks of shooting on the film before he got fired.
Oh, there you go.
I'll just skip to this quote, if you will. Here was the man answering a question about Piranha 2. I was replaced after 2.5 weeks by the Italian producer. He just fired me and took over, which is what he wanted to do when he hired me. It wasn't until much later that I even figured out what had happened. It was like, oh man, I thought I was doing a good job, but when I saw what they were cutting together, it was horrible. And then the producer wouldn't take my name off the picture because contractually they couldn't deliver it with an Italian name, so they left me on no matter what I did. I had no legal power to influence him from Pomona, California, where I was sleeping on a friend's couch. I didn't even know an attorney. In actual fact, I did some directing on the film, but I don't feel it was my first movie.
Well, we'll call it some learning, like training wheels.
Yes.
And he obviously, I would assume, made a connection with Lance Henriksen.
Yes.
I don't think it's a coincidence that he worked with him repeatedly after
yes.
that. I would be surprised if that was the case, but
yeah,
right out of the gate, I guess we can't be overly hard on James Cameron as much as I would like to at this point in time. So I guess it is kind of sleazy in a way that they would do that to him and then intentionally make a cheesy, schlocky movie and put someone else's name on it. That's bad form, at the very least.
Yes, the producer's name, by the way, is Ovidio G. Anastatonitz. I'm sure I'm saying that incorrectly.
Yeah, I think the accent makes you a little racist, but that's
okay. So can we go burn some crosses now, Larry? Okay, all right.
When the Italian producers are involved, and I don't want to be indelicate, this is my turn to be racist.
Okay.
But especially in this day and age, exploitation films were just a quick buck for them, and they're not taking it too seriously personally. This was the next one, right? This is nobody's favorite movie, and it's one of the rare occasions where I kind of get the feeling like nobody was passionate about this movie.
Well, it even looks like one of those exploitation Italian movies, like just the aesthetic of it, the color, the sound, the music. It feels very much like those Giallo or those zombie films over.
On a bare bones, what are we requiring? We're requiring sex and gore. And in the first 5 minutes of the movie, we are given exactly that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're following their own rules, and I guess that we can have some limited respect for. When we get to the plot itself, the location has changed. This is the ocean. It's no longer like inland, So the piranhas have somehow made it to the ocean. But a vast school of carnivorous super piranhas isn't good enough. These piranhas can fly out of the air.
And they like forever permafrown. That's the sort of beautiful thing about these fish.
They can live inside a human's body, like the corpse of a human being. There's a ridiculous scene where a nurse gets like an alien pop scare out of this corpse. This fish jumps out of it and bites her neck.
Yep.
And I described that, and it sounds totally stupid, but I had to admit that I laughed out loud when it happened.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if the movie wanted me to laugh out loud at that point.
See, this is when I sort of ask, because the script is basically, well, it's under H.A. Milton, but that's the ghost name for Cameron. Basically, Anastatonitz. I'm saying this wrong.
Again, you don't have to do the accent.
I'm not doing it anymore. It's just coming out that it's just coming out that way. It's the same way when
I've got these friends, Tony, Grace, and then Tony.
It's just happening. I can't control it. It's a problem. All right, so this is how a Western is going. A Western man from.
I can stand that.
All right, Hooked on Phonics worked for me. Okay, I didn't want to sound like. All right. I mean, do it like phonetically. It's gonna sound like asanotis, like it's a weird, viral infection. So that's why I'm going. Never mind.
The
Anyways,
Italian dude said.
that Italian guy there, a little more politically correct. Never. Anyways, Ovidio. Stop it. Ovidio? Is that how you want to do it?
Ovidio G. Asantis.
Thank you.
Sonatus?
See, at least can you at least understand my struggle of trying to say that name phonetically?
Ovidio G. Asantis.
Exactly. So when you have to say, it's like Ennio Morricone.
No, there's this weird music that we're choosing to put to this. This might be more interesting than talking about Piranha 2, but I think we should maybe
get back to Piranha 2. But you have to leave this in. Anyways,
I'm so time wore on.
This feels like a Monty Python skit already. Or it's maybe something that Tom Stoppard would start to write. Okay, so this Italian guy named Ovidio, he eventually took over the project, and I think all along probably wanted it. This is their script, but I kind of wonder if some of the decisions that Ovidio made was like that whole fish staying in that body for that long. It just seemed like such an exploitative idea that makes no sense whatsoever, and something that Cameron probably would not.
I kind of feel like the sleaze and the sex in the movie, that's one of the things that's interestingly absent from all of James Cameron's movies is sex. Sex doesn't seem to exist in his world that
Terminator.
much. I guess there is a sex in Terminator, but again, in that case,
Avatar.
It was a necessity of the plot.
Yeah.
Because he had to father
the
son.
It's not quite,
But he's not known for bringing the heat, is guess what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And these scenes aren't shot particularly, amazingly. There's like, if we've got the nipples in frame, then it's in focus. We're good to go. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Those are the things where I can tell this is not a steady hand. And again, I feel that Italian exploitation is just like, do we got it? We got it. Moving on.
Yeah.
There's not. We don't care. We don't care.
Yeah.
And so you got these weirdly, strangely high quality, like the helicopter sequence.
Yeah.
There's ludicrous, like he abandons his helicopter, jumps into the ocean, and the helicopter crashes and explodes into the water. And it's a stupid thing, but it's professionally executed when they do it. And it stands out because very few things in the movie seem professionally executed.
The script, in a lot of ways, I mean, it's even more a ripoff of Jaws than the first one is. I mean, this one takes place at a bloody resort, and I swear to God, like the owner of the resort at one point, he's almost wearing a Murray Hamilton jacket.
Yeah,
I could be wrong on that, but it was like, hey, wait a second. But the supporting characters are not, they're not even like real characters. They're sort of like avatars with sort of like human condition emotions.
A lot of runtimes dedicated to this fucking veterinarian and this terrible girl who wants to sleep with a doctor but settles for the veterinarian.
Yeah.
Why are these people in the movie? What purpose do they serve?
Yeah. It's not even sort of like real human behavior. It's just sort of...
And we keep going back to them.
Yeah.
And
like, I'm on team homicidal fish when it starts coming.
Please kill these people.
Yeah, but I think that's almost by design. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're also, it is a sequel to Piranha, but I don't feel it's a sequel that has much respect or put much thought into the original movie or connective tissue at all. And these winged piranhas that fly out and go right for the throat and the jugular vein.
Yeah.
I could say that's ludicrous, but I mean, obviously that's ludicrous. But why that choice? And why no explanation for that choice? Yeah. Instead, it's like, here's these two hot chicks and they're total bitches, so we know that they're going to die. Yeah. Oh, and let's make sure we see their boobs before that happens. Yeah. Check, check, and check. All right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So Lance Henriksen feels, and Trisha O'Neill, I guess, feel like the only authentic characters in the movie.
That and their son, although it's a really weird choice, and it's I'm sure it's done intentionally, but the mother-son relationship is got this really weird vibe to it in the first scene, and I'm sure it was just done to be distracting, but they're literally hugging each other, holding each other like this. Obviously, he's trying to show a sign of intimacy, like not like sexual intimacy, but like mother-son, but it registers as...
When you say like this, they're just sort of like hanging limply over each other.
Yeah, but then the dialogue could be interpreted either way.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's done just for exploitive take, but it's one of those weird things that makes this whole stew, as I would call it, of just...
I think I know what you mean, but I'm not sure that it was as deliberate as maybe you're giving them credit for. In my experience, if an Italian exploitation movie wants to press a nerve, they'll just jump right up and down on it. They won't subtly hint at it.
But it's not
Mom
subtle.
and son will be macking out. They won't have their arms around each other.
It's not subtle. Like, I'm sure it was just one of those weird choices either done by the director or even the actors as a lark even. Yeah. But it's just one of those weird little tidbits in the movie that is Piranha 2. Yeah. There's a lot of weird, bizarre things that I wouldn't want to call this film a cult classic, but it's still obviously around.
Well, it's sort of like check off the cliches, right?
Yeah.
Lance Henriksen's best friend, the black dude who's blowing up fish with dynamite.
Yeah.
Everything that's established in that scene basically tells us about the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Lance Henriksen's friend who kills fish with dynamite is going to supply us with how we're going to deal with our problem at the end.
Yeah.
And of course, because he is black and because he's the best friend of the main character, this man is so doomed. Yeah. And absolutely check.
He was doomed when his son was died.
Yeah,
so.
But that character, like when we meet him, he's exploding fish with dynamite. Yeah. How are they going to deal with the fish at the end of the movie?
Yeah.
Dynamite.
Yeah.
Who is this character? What is his purpose in the movie? Like, if you watched any other movies ever, you'll know where this is going. Yeah. It's the kind of obvious cliche that people actively avoid because of how obvious a cliche is. Yeah. But if you want to play cliche bingo, you can do that with this movie. Yeah. And it is kind of amusing for that. Yeah. Again, where I started at the beginning of it, is that good? Well, I don't think I can honestly say that's good. Yeah. But I kind of had fun watching it. And there are worst movies on this list. There just are. There are harder watches on this list.
No, Piranha 2 ends up being one of those late night drive-in movies that would play well at 11 o'clock at night, and you'd have a good time at all the stupidity that you're seeing on the screen. It delivers the goods and the sex and the violence, I will say, and even the good old fish homicide. It's that nice little mix.
It's an what it is movie, and I guess the big twist is the flying piranha.
Yeah.
But let's all just take a moment to thank Ovidio Giason.
You can't even say it now without even...
I did that deliberately.
I know, but just try and say it normally. Try.
Is there anything else that we want to try to say about this messy movie? This review has been about as messy as the movie.
Yeah, the film is a lot of fun. It's a great cheesy time. It's by no ways War and Peace, but hey, Piranha 2, The Spawning. No, I think that's about it.
How does it feel?
Like they're still there, my fingers. I've been moving. You'll have phantom feelings for years. Heat, irritation, pain. Your memory is still feeding familiar sensations of having a handle on your nerve endings.
What have you been doing during these blackouts?
Misplacing things.
I'd be scared if I were you.
Did you see my signet ring?
No. Are you all right?
Oh, yes. You never know what you can do. The unconscious is capable of anything. You could do anything you ever dreamed of and never had the guts to do.
Hi. I like the way you look at me.
Blackouts are nothing to fool with. You could kill somebody. It's all up there, and you'll never know.
Know what?
Who you are.
Don't be afraid of the pain. Tell me what you're feeling.
You're trying to kill me, aren't you?
Sense it, feel it, touch it.
You want to destroy me?
What is your image?
A man trapped in a nightmare.
So, in 1981, it wasn't just Piranha 2: The Spawning that hit the theater.
Was Piranha 2 81?
Yeah, it was.
All
and
right.
so is Oliver Stone's The Hand.
Yes.
It's interesting. I just have the IMDb open on it, and it says, as the little description of the plot, a comic book artist loses his hand, which in turn takes on a murderous life of its own. Yeah. I think that there should be a 3-word sentence to follow that up. Do you guess what that is?
No, go for it.
Or does it? Question.
Dun, dun. I mean, because that is the movie, yeah.
So that description is the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's some good and bad things to be said about that. I think I told you when I watched it, my two big takeaways were I didn't quite get the Michael Caine as the romantic lead. I think he's a great actor, but I don't...
Okay, but he's supposed to be more an everyman character. Like, anyways, yeah, I hear what you're saying.
It's just... Again, and we'll talk about it more specifically, his actual behaviors in the movie, but I feel like the movie is treating him like a romantic, heroic lead, but his character is not particularly heroic or romantic at all. Right? That might be more character than it is Michael Caine, but we'll get to it.
I saw him more as a tragic figure, but yes.
I think that we have an even tougher version of what I have called in the past the Chucky problem in this movie.
Okay.
When you have an adversary that is that small and of that little substance and weight.
Yeah.
How do you make it like
threatening
and scary and not just silly and ridiculous?
Yeah.
And I think it's to the movie's credit that they come closer to scary than to ridiculous most of the time.
Yes.
But it is a really, really out there premise.
That is
there is no bit of wink to this.
Yeah.
It is 100% straight-faced, stony, serious. It's an Oliver Stone movie.
Yeah.
This isn't Oliver Stone slumming it. This is written and directed by Oliver Stone, and he's making a horror movie.
Yeah.
Is it a good one?
It's an interesting one. I kind of sort of... I sort of thought this is a film that even when it was released in 81, that was pretty much out of its time. It comes from a different time and different place. Mm-hmm. You know, there's in the 1930s and 40s, they had the Hands of Orlac, and there was the 5-Finger Hand of Death or something with Peter Lorre as well, where they had these sort of appendages movies. Whether it be the hand, the arm, the
very
brain.
Literal body horror.
Yes. Yes. So in this sort of 1980s day and age, it was going to be a tough sell. It is actually based off a book called The Lizard's Tale.
Yeah.
And they make a quick little reference of that even in the first 10 minutes of the movie. But whenever we do see the hand, and at least in the violence mode, you can't help but chuckle now. And it's part of it's not even its own fault, is because we've had films like Evil Dead 2 come and, make that scene completely immortalized and hilarious, because it is.
I think that before Evil Dead 2 happened, one could really ask, can you do a fight scene between a man and a hand that isn't all credible? And maybe you'd say no, but Evil Dead 2 proved to the world it could be done.
Oh, yeah.
But this is obviously a completely different animal than Evil Dead 2. So he's a comic book illustrator and writer, and he's got a pretty rocky marriage even before things are going south. But after he loses his hand in this freak traffic accident, he falls apart fairly quickly and badly. And, his wife is making doe eyes at this hilariously 80 fashion.
But here's the thing: I almost don't blame her in a lot of ways, because
she is being actively pushed away. Anytime she tries to comfort him, she says no. Anytime she tries to give him good advice, he says no. Anytime she does anything, it's the wrong thing. Right? And so he takes a job away from where they're living and ends up having an affair, meeting this Bruce McGill character. And yes, lo and behold, all of these people to which he holds personal animosity, bad things start to happen. The artist who is being hired to recreate his comic books, who's amusingly played by Charlie Fleischer, who's the voice of Roger Rabbit.
Yep.
His work is destroyed by the hand.
Yes.
And how much does he understand what this power is?
Yeah.
So in a way, I like the psychological angle. And psychological angle wouldn't work if you weren't taking it seriously.
Yeah.
But then the B-movie angle of the crawling hand.
Yeah.
I don't think that the two things marry. The metaphor marries completely. Yeah. Just because the idea of the image of the creeping hand is maybe a creepier image in your head than an idea to build an entire story around.
And quite honestly, I think what they should have done is not shown the hand up until the very end, right when it is killing the psychiatrist, and I think you should have made that quite brutal, no matter how you were going to do it. Because the real, like, one of the big angles that the movie's trying to promote is this or is this not real? Is he actually insane?
And I don't even think they definitively answer it, even with that ending, because you could argue that that's just what he sees, right?
You could put that angle, but from early on, we're meant to believe that his severed hand, which is beautifully done by Marco Bimbaldi, I think, am I saying that correctly? And I was Stan Winston and Marco Bimbaldi. Where are we? Carlo Rambaldi. Thank you. Sorry, Carlo Rambaldi. It's actually pretty well done, but that's your kind of main selling point in the movies. That's your story, is that this is a man that's clearly been driven insane. We're going to do this whole wink, wink, is he or isn't he angle. Let that cat out of the bag at the very end instead of in the first 20 minutes.
And I do think that pacing is a bit of a problem here.
Okay.
Like, I think that keeping it to a tight 80 to 90 minutes would have been beneficial to the ridiculousness of the story. Your phone's trying to sabotage our podcast.
It's Skynet.
I don't think that the ridiculousness of, like, the crawling hand meshes well with the psychological depth of the story that they're attempting to tell, is what I was trying to say. And yes, you talk about at the end of the movie, because it's so clear and obvious that Michael Caine's character is getting more and more insane as this movie is progressing. He's taking out vengeance. He's, responsible for his wife's death at this point, and he's almost gleeful as all of this is going down. And then we smash cut to, yes, he's being interviewed by a psychiatrist. Yeah. And it reminded me of the last scene of Psycho, where the shrink shows up to explain to the audience what the movie was all about, right? And it's a manifestation of all your anger, of all your hate. What would the hand do if it was here? Yeah. And of course the hand appears and kills her. Yeah. And again, like I said about the description of the movie, an artist loses his hand and it takes on a life of its own and kills people. Yeah. Or does it. Yeah. And that is the whole movie. And that is 2 hours of your life, right? And I think getting that down to a tight 80 or 90 would have made me like the movie more.
Okay, so what would you have jettisoned?
I think that there's a lot of air in the scenes. It's the early 80s movies. It sort of feels like the late 70s movie, where they really don't mind just letting you seep into the atmosphere. Yeah. And a lot of times that really works with more, it sounds weird to say real world when you talk about The Exorcist, but because of the religious angle of The Exorcist, it feels more, quote, real world. Yeah. So we have more patience with it. Yeah. Yeah, okay. What do you think of the either dream sequences or images of clairvoyancy? Like, that's some of my favorite stuff. Yeah. Especially the shower scene for some reason, where he goes to reach for the nozzle in the shower, and the nozzle. Yeah, that's very German expressionistic. Yeah, yeah. Turns into this weird metallic, drippy hand thing. Yeah. And I thought, because you got the feeling like something was going to happen, but you certainly couldn't have anticipated that. Yeah. And this sort of, the way it was dripping and melting, I thought was a nice visual metaphor for what was happening to the Michael Caine character. Yeah. I also wish we could have liked the Michael Caine character more, at least personally. I stopped feeling sympathetic for him after a certain point. Yeah. And if I really believed that art was his life, and that when he lost his hand, he lost his way to express his art, and that's where this anger was coming from. But I just felt him like he was mad at everything and taking it out on everyone else, which is, probably how people react to trauma, but it was pushing me away from him. Like, when he was righteous and angry with his wife, I didn't feel on side with him. I didn't empathize with his position. Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you. I even actually had the question, what do you think of the wife? I don't hate the wife character like I should. Well, like the movie seems to... Yeah. We don't necessarily hate her, but we were supposed to empathize with how hurt he is by her behavior. Yeah. And I don't think she does anything that he doesn't do worse. Yeah. Like, she might be cold and distant from him, but he is actively shitty to her, right? Yeah. She might be clearly falling in love slowly with another person, but he fucks a student at the first opportunity. Yeah. He's the worst of the two, and clearly. Yeah. And she dies, and he gets... So we are allowed to believe that he did murder her, though, at the end. That's what the shrink is saying, and that's why he's been committed, presumably. And I guess if it was his hand, it would be his fingerprints or whatever. But yeah, his hand is severed. But I honestly don't think that the movie answers the question. And after 2 hours, maybe they should have picked one. So you don't think that it gives you
Like
I think they went psychological, like all of the other things, like the black and white dream sequences, the car, the fact that the hand gets rid of problems for him. Like anything he would be motivated to do, the hand takes care of it. Doesn't have any agency of its own. Yeah, you can say, and they actually show in a flashback scene him attacking the girl he was having the affair with. Yeah. So if we're to believe that image, but again, we don't know. Yeah. And the movie doesn't definitively answer it. I think that we're supposed to, like, the big gotcha moment is the movie's told us that Michael Caine's crazy, he's been committed, this is the end. But then, aha, there's the hand. And then, like, ooh, gotcha. But no, it really honestly felt like they just didn't make a choice there.
Really? I thought they did.
Yeah? The hand was real?
The hand was real after Winton killed her. I mean, he's tied up even, and, you know, he takes off the straps. We're presuming that he escapes the asylum. So
he
I think...
takes off the straps, but he does free himself. The hand doesn't free him, he frees himself.
Yeah, I still think that they were showing their hand at that point. Even though...
They were showing their hand, Lee.
Even the whole image about how he gets his ring back, and I'm surprised you haven't talked about one of the insane cliches of the jumping cat scare.
Oh yes,
and that cat that like plummets himself through that window. It's really bizarrely handled.
Keep showing that thing eating lizards and stuff. There's a lot of weird hunter prey imagery throughout it. They kept on, like, I thought that maybe the cat was gonna fucking catch the hand, or that the hand was gonna, but they didn't ever end up playing that part. I wanted to talk about Bruce McGill. He's one of the other professors at this college when he's working at that he meets, and he kind of makes a connection with, and he confides in, and who is actually a pretty decent friend to him, considering they don't know each other from Adam. And Michael Caine subsequently sleeps with the girl that he's clearly in love with, and when he figures it out, Michael Caine kills the dude. Yeah. And it's a pretty thankless role, but I have to say, I really thought that performance by Bruce McGill was strong. Just one of, like, the characters, like, was fully fledged. He was a flawed guy, he is a little bit pretentious, but it was a fully realized character, a lot of range. When he was really upset and sad, he looked all bleary and drunk and miserable, and you could see him recognize on the face, you fucking slept with her. Like, he doesn't say it, but you see the realization on his face. Everybody likes to pour praise on Michael Caine, and he certainly doesn't suck.
He classes up this joint.
Yeah, but I think in those scenes, the Bruce McGill actor, he just did circles around Michael Caine.
He makes his role. Yeah. That is the best way I'd sort of describe it. No, he did what he had with a small part and made it a great character. So we feel that depth, and that happens. And then I agree, all that credit goes to Bruce McGill in that scene.
It's a fairly standard Michael Caine performance. It's not as, like, whacked as, like, Dressed to Kill or some of the more bigger Michael Caine performances. Yeah. I think he was taking them, like, again, like everyone else, he was taking it straight and seriously. Yeah. And like I say, I can't really think of, he's been in bad movies, but I can't really think of a lot of examples. I mean,
he made this movie because he wanted to extend his garage, is what he said. This is definitely a paycheck movie. Yeah.
But he doesn't give a paycheck performance.
No. When you get Michael Caine, you get Michael Caine. You know, he's kind of like Jeff Goldblum in a lot of ways now, is where, he's really just doing Michael Caine, the character actor, and and put that role, in a different kind of movie. But I don't think he ever undersells anything.
Yeah, but he never necessarily disappears either. You always know you're watching Michael Caine, but you usually like it. Yeah. If these ingredients sound interesting to you, by all means check out The Hand. But it's certainly not anything that I'm enthusiastic about.
No, I mean, it's a slick production. That's the best way I would sort of describe it. And they sort of succeed in at least taking a sort of serious approach to this movie. This movie could have fallen off the rails very easily. So I'm surprised that actually works in some sort of way.
Because honestly, if I was making a movie called The Hand, I would imagine taking a lighter approach, trying to have some fun with it. Yeah. And they're not trying to have fun with it. They're trying to be thoughtful. But again, I just don't know how the silliness and the thoughtfulness are incongruous, I guess.
Yep.
Who is it?
If you enjoy
Who's there?
being really scared, if you're not afraid of the unknown, if you've found a friend in fear, then we have a friend for you.
Hi.
Samantha.
Get me the police.
The director who unleashed Freddy in Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes Craven, now brings you his most frightening creation.
Get out of my house!
Hey, girl. She's killing people. Mom? Sam? Sam.
You're so cute.
Deadly friend. She can't live without you.
So Deadly Friend is not like a movie that got terrible out of age. It was terrible in 1986. I saw this at a young age and I knew it was fucking terrible.
I think everyone involved will say that this movie is a disaster.
But it is really strange to me because in my memory, just because I guess it made more sense, he made Deadly Blessing. Wes Craven made Deadly Blessing before Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Right? It was clearly a movie he must have made before Nightmare on Elm Street, right?
Yeah.
No, this is his follow-up to Nightmare on Elm Street. He just hit the big times, and this was the next thing that came out. Yeah. And it's a very, quote, modern, in 1986 movie about forward-thinking robotics, electronics, computer consciousness, and it's, I guess you could argue 20 or 30 years before its time, but it's also awful.
Yep.
Front to back, wall to wall, top to bottom.
Yep.
No redeeming performances, no redeeming sequences. It is a hard sit.
Yeah.
And like I have said before in the podcast, I don't like just being about hate, especially if it's a director that I like.
Yeah.
But I am sitting here before you fucking flabbergasted.
Yeah, this movie is a disaster. Part of the problem, once again, a lot of the things that happened off stage or backstage kind of ended up on what is now the muddled mess of Deadly Friend. You have to imagine that Wes Craven had just come off a Nightmare on Elm Street, but he also wanted to get outside of the horror genre. That was no secret. He said that for a long time, that he wanted to be a filmmaker, not just a genre film director, and that's just what sort of Hollywood pigeon-toed him into.
Yeah. But he made, Serpent the Rainbow. He made music of art.
I know. Anyways. And he just saw his friend and colleague John Carpenter do Starman and received both critical and commercial success. I mean, Jeff Bridges was getting a nomination and everything. So Universal Pictures had the screenplay originally called BB, and even like the head. Are you fine? Did you swallow something?
No, go ahead. Sorry, I will wait to let unleash on BB.
Anyways. And even like the head of Universal at the time, apparently just wept reading the script. And originally it was supposed to be this sort of coming of age love story between a boy and his robot essentially. And it was Craven thought it was going to be his Starman, and originally it was going to be this sort of family, not quite family friendly, but more of a family film involving this boy and this robot, who eventually love, learn, and go on together. And anyways, they made that movie, and then they had the first test screening, and it all turned to disaster right from there. A lot of people were expecting the next Wes Craven horror movie. That's
what they advertised it as.
Well, but see, that was not the script. That was not the story.
Well, that's so. I mean. And that's kind of painfully obvious. The very, very, very first thing you see in this movie, this guy tries to break into the car, and the robot threatens his life. Yeah. And that screams to me as a late-stage reshoot. Yes. Because the movie clearly starts in the next scene with the son and the mother talking their exposition about the fresh move and their friendly, gremlin chattering robot, BB, in the back seat. That fucking robot has to be the most irritating character in film history. I wish they had twin Jar Jar Binks in this movie over that BB robot. Like, it's gremlin-y chatter that it does.
BB. Yeah.
And then the cheesy 80s robot voice.
Yeah.
It's basically kind of looks like number 5 is alive with just a little bit white.
Johnny
more,
5, yeah.
Johnny 5 with more white on it instead of silver.
Yeah.
And the execution of the character, everything about it is irritating and hard to watch.
Yeah.
And counterintuitively, at least in the original form of the script, I think we're supposed to love BB. Like we're supposed to. We're supposed to bond with this
Like
robot.
here's the thing.
We're supposed to care about this robot.
Yes.
It's going to be important because when BB gets destroyed, it's got to be this big moment for the film.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, when Anne Ramsey gets the double barrel shotgun and starts killing BB,
you're cheering.
I'm on Team Ramsey. I'm celebrating this robot stuff. And the main character, this terrible actor named Matthew Laborte, is just no BB, no. And I'm like, yeah, BB, die.
Hey,
you
but at least,
die
but you can't be too hard on BB because it actually gives one of the best end credit title songs ever with "I'm BB."
I hate it so much.
That song is awesome.
I couldn't even put it like ironically on a mixed CD for you.
It's right up there with "My Head Is Like a Shark's Fin," baby. Deepest blue. I'm BB.
But lest you think BB is the only cringe-inducing thing in this thing. Like I was pretty shitty about the lead.
Yeah.
Christy Swanson.
All right, I want to get to her, but I want to finish my original thought here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because what happened was they had this test screening, and it was a disaster. Like people hated what they saw. They were expecting a horror movie, so they went back, and they put in like all the R-rated bloody moments, the dream sequences, even that nightmare sequence with the father. Getting stabbed and shooting.
That's right out of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah,
that's a deleted scene from Nightmare on Elm Street. She's in her bed.
Yeah,
and he comes
all
up
of that,
through the sheets like a shark.
And then the ending, which you also commented about. They reshot the ending.
And the two things
they took out a lot of the character building scenes in the first half of the movie between Christy Swanson and the boy, because that love story was played up a whole lot more. And so when that tragedy happens. When he does the whole Frankenstein thing.
Christy Swanson, his friendly neighbor who he's falling in love with, is killed by her abusive father, so he makes her an evil robot. Sorry we didn't mention that.
Sorry. Anyways, yeah. That's all in the director's cut.
Right.
And so what you had is like two totally different movies all of a sudden come together.
And it's obvious.
Yeah.
It's not cleanly sliced.
Here's the thing I've often wondered, though. I wonder if you even saw Wes Craven's original cut, that the movie would still be terrible. Because
the acting is not good.
Yeah.
Like across the board, not very good.
Yeah.
And you can tell. There's another movie, although this movie, for some reason, people seem to think is amazing and worship, which is the same issue, right?
Yeah.
David Lynch's Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
Was originally made as a 90-minute pilot episode for a TV show. Nobody wanted it. So he added an extra 45 minutes of smut and strange and called it Mulholland Drive, and people heaped rewards and praise on him.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to say, we tried to make an aw shucks sci-fi romance, but it's terrible. So let's give them what they really wanted, which was a horror movie. Yeah. And you can feel it. Like, the first 45 minutes of this movie has no frights to it and no personality to it.
Yeah.
And, maybe they cut out the good scenes where I felt Christy Swanson and Sky Bottom.
Yeah, see, that's why I even sort of think that it would have been just as bad. That
first kiss that they have is one of the most painful things. There's no heat there at all. In fact, I would just assume that those two actors had a passionate hate for each other, and this was as close as they could get to bringing the heat.
Yeah.
But I hate to be mean to Christy Swanson because she was so young.
Yeah, 19, I think.
But when she's resurrected and she's affecting the BB movements,
that's
it is embarrassing for me to watch.
It's a bad choice all around.
I'm embarrassed for her. Mm-hmm. I'm embarrassed for everybody who was on set who didn't say anything to help her out of this humiliation.
Yeah.
It's scary for all the wrong reasons. It becomes this cringe comedy, uncomfortable, theater of stupid. There's an infamous, semi-famous sequence where Anne Ramsey is killed with
that was one of the reshoots,
with a basketball that shatters her head like porcelain glass.
Yeah.
And, I guess it's like that isolated moment in The Wicker Man where Nick Cage goes so deliriously over the top that it becomes just for a moment hilarious.
Yeah.
But that moment is so not worth putting up with this movie.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about all the trials and tribulations. And, like, I guess that explains, like, he went in trying to make an Oshuk sci-fi and then had to retool it into horror. And, of course, it came out like utter garbage.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't, take out the kid gloves on this. I can't pretend it's anything but terrible.
It's a disaster. I don't know what else I can say. This, like I said, it's one of those films that apparently, like the recent Hellboy probably has gone through, where there was so much infighting backstage, too many cooks, that this was the muddled mess that it was.
The big ending sequence, if it was a different movie, I guess maybe would have worked. But the idea that evil BB. Why are you trying to sabotage this podcast with?
I don't know.
The idea.
This phone is doing that. I don't. You saw it originally.
Yeah. The idea that an evil BB would erupt out of this person. Mm-hmm. It has no setup or background to this. The BB would suddenly be full on satanic evil. Nothing. But like, maybe that could have been the ending to another movie in which that ending made sense.
I often wondered if that really tragic melodramatic sequence where she's running towards the cop to get shot, or she's trying to stop. That was probably the original ending of the script, and then they tacked on that god awful "You're Coming With Me" scene.
Death by cop suicide.
Yeah.
I don't know. And him going to the morgue to steal her body to bring her back to life again is just an idea of a character who has moved not at all forward, who has learned nothing. It's not the only really bad movie that Wes Craven made, but I do think it is the very worst movie that Wes Craven made. I think it manages to outsuck My Soul to Take.
That's bold words.
That's impressive.
Bold words.
My Soul to Take is pretty embarrassing.
Brave words.
I give me Swamp Thing again and again and again over this.
Oh, see, like, then you bring in Swamp Thing, and it's one of those. It gives pause. It gives pause.
I still love me some Wes Craven. And
even like Vampire in Brooklyn, dude.
I haven't seen Vampire in Brooklyn.
You have not seen Vampire in Brooklyn?
If
that
I did,
has
it was
to be.
Long ago, I barely remember.
Dude, I think that has to be the worst.
That's the bottom.
Scraping the barrel of the
Craven if someday, in episode 5024, it sinks to the level of reviewing Vampire in Brooklyn, that will be the day I decide. I have no memory of that movie. I think I did watch it at some point, but that
dude, you know how nerdy that just sounded too. This needs to end.
Deadly
Friend. It sucks.
Bullet point. If you haven't seen Deadly Friend,
baby,
good for
you.
Did I scare you? I am sorry.
When I killed it, it was a wolf. And then before my very eyes.
Neither child nor adult, wolf nor human. This is the twilight world, which lies between the pages of any fairy tale.
My, what big arms do you have?
To deny it is to kill the child that lives within us all. To enter it is to kill the dreams of childhood.
Jesus, what big teeth you have!
Where did you hear a story like that?
Not a story, but God's honest truth. Granny told me.
They are all the company we keep, even in our dreams.
So, the Company of Wolves was interesting for a lot of reasons. I mean, Neil Jordan, I guess, the height of his popularity was probably the first half of the 90s. I think he's always made interesting films. But this has the kind of intersecting pretzel narratives within narratives, multiple stories. Like it seems so as consciously affected as like the Grand Budapest Hotel was with Wes Anderson, but it's less interested in whimsy and fun and character, and more interested in exploring this sort of fairy tale realm. So we get a series of stories, some that are actually like delivered as monologues, some that are actually
they're vignettes is what
us.
I would call them.
It's almost an anthology, and that anthology is sort of bookended by this modern pieces. This teenage girl falls asleep after reading a magazine, and presumably this wandering series of narratives is her dreamscape and our exploration of fairy tale tropes. Particularly, the wolf and the maiden kind of motif, the innocent maiden fair and the big bad wolf who wants after her. And it seems much more an exploration of themes and tone than it is of character or story. It's hypnotizing, it's odd, and I enjoyed watching it. But again, I don't know if I would say I would recommend it to somebody. I don't regret my time with this movie, but it's not amazing.
It's interesting. I'll give it that. I really liked it.
On a given day, there'll probably be more interesting things to watch. Yeah. But if you're obsessed with cool werewolf transformations, you're gonna.
It has some amazing special effects.
Like if you're down to just for that sequence, I think a lot of people will just want to check that out. And it has one of the most memorable covers for a movie that I can remember from my childhood. Ever since I was a little kid, seeing the VHS with that screaming mouth and the snout of a dog erupting out of it.
It's a horrifying image.
Strong, and I always remembered that cover. So in a way, in the end, I don't know what to make of it. It is a bunch of imagery. Angela Lansbury shows up in here. It's set sort of in a wonder no time, but it's also unmistakably the 80s. It's got that sort of soft dream tint to it, like it's almost slightly out of focus, but deliberate. I think people who are into set design and the technical art of filmmaking, but that was the stuff that was jiving for me. Do you know what I'm saying? As a person who likes film, I appreciated the movie. And I might have appreciated the movie more than I liked it.
Okay. Well, vampires used to be allegorically about sexual promiscuity. I mean, that's the sort of part of the backbone of that folklore. But what they've done is, instead of vampires, let's add werewolves. This is, once again, I'd be curious to see how this film would play in the Me Too movement, because really it's all about toxic masculinity. And how it's connected to...
the violence is sexual.
Well, not only that, but anytime, bad male behavior, it's referenced as werewolves.
But whereas traditional werewolves is the beast within, all of our worst parts and our deep, dark desires that we pent down are let out. And
that's what this Company of Wolves is really all about. I mean, why else would you have the Little Red Riding Hood story? It's exploring that. It's in a lot of ways, though, it's an anti-Puritan movie, even though it's set during that time and what the author is exploring. But she's not afraid of sexuality in a lot of ways, because when at the end, it's metaphorically she's made love and she becomes a wolf herself. Even the mother character in the story, is explaining to her that Daddy doesn't hurt me. It's actually it's something else. And your grandmother is smart in some areas, but not so much. It's all about the end of innocence and an awakening of a lot of things, not just sexual awakening.
Well, the fear of the big bad wolf, as the fear of sexuality.
But she does embrace adulthood. But there is a whole lot of the fear is a lot of male rage. I'll just say that much, or male bad behavior. And usually that sort of explored more in werewolf stories or vampire stories than it is werewolves. Even though we have The Howling, which explores that same sort of theme, that's what this really is. And it's structured as a play. Like the whole vignettes, that's the kind of thing that you could get away more in a play than in a traditional cinematic narrative.
But the story does seem to reset itself every 30 minutes or so. Or
it's an attack on class, it's an attack on gender roles in a lot of ways. it's I don't know how else to describe it. It is a very interesting piece.
It's ambitious and interesting. I don't think I cracked the screenplay, but I'm not sure if it's because the screenplay is smarter than I am. And as far as these conventions of the fantasy images, and Little Red Riding Hood, the symbol of innocence, and the big bad wolf, but this is a tale as old as time, very literally. This is one of the oldest emblems of that. And
in a lot of ways, I really do think it's the sort of start of a trilogy of stories that he explored both in Interview and Byzantine, because he likes having their monsters talking about class structure and sexual political structure and hierarchies and whatnot. All those three stories have those connections. So I kind of wonder if Jordan ever really sort of sees it like that.
A lot of times you would see this rented in the horror movie section, and
rightly so.
You can loosely say, I guess, it is a werewolf picture, but it doesn't fit the mold necessarily of a traditional. And there's a percentage of art cinema to it as well. And I think it's sort of about what it's about moment to moment instead of overall. This scene is going to address this. And then the next scene is going to address this. But the whole movie doesn't have a plaster man, so to speak.
Not in the traditional narrative sense, but I do think it seems like a young screenwriter who was playing around with certain themes, and that sort of became a part of the real narrative. Using traditional supernatural elements to sort of express what she's trying to work through in a lot of ways. It feels like a very interesting piece in a lot of ways. I don't know how to sort of describe it. There are a lots of words for it.
It's hard for me to describe how I feel about the movie because I guess I don't know exactly how I feel about the movie. But one of the more memorable sequences, Stephen Ray, who's an actor that
we have a young Stephen Ray,
in Neil Jordan movies quite a bit. He's gone werewolf, and the werewolf is decapitated, and the head flings across the room, bounces off the wall, and lands in this big pan or bucket of milk. And as the head rolls in it, we see that it's no longer the wolf, but it's Stephen Ray as this pure white milk starts turning red. And there's all these very specific choices about that. And some of them, like, why was that big container of milk just sitting there? Like, it's because they needed
I think that was a more visual cool
because they wanted the head to land there. That's why it's there, not because it makes sense, right? And that is a really cool image and a really strong scene, but that's where all the decision making is going in the movie. Do you know what I mean? What looks good or what feels good as opposed to what makes sense. It's a cross, I guess, because she's dreaming between fairy tale logic and dream logic, which means it's kind of tenuous in its what it's doing moment to moment. But it doesn't shake me off, and it's not obtuse the way I always pick on David Lynch for being. Like, I'm still with the thread of the movie. And there are reoccurring elements that you can stay grounded with, and we come back to these same characters. And Angela Lansbury, like we said, playing both the narrator and the grandmother figure. It's funny how long Angela Lansbury was playing.
And she bites it hardcore in this movie. Like, there's a couple of deaths that are, like, for the records.
Well, and you go back to the original Grimm's Fairy Tales, too. A lot of the times we get this sort of sweet, dumbed-down bedtime story for your kids version of Red Riding Hood, not, people being cut open and stuff like that, In their original forms, these are horror stories more than they are, quote, fairy tale or fantasy stories. And this movie definitely honors that. But it's an interesting dreamscape experience movie. And I chew over it, I think about it. Sometimes I think it means something, sometimes I think maybe they're just taking wild swings.
I think it's all very deliberate on what she's trying to explore, the writer.
It's memorable.
And what Neil Jordan are sort of exploring about.
It's memorable, and it has stuck in my head since I was a kid. Like, I've never let go of it. And just for that reason, I would recommend it over a lot of the other movies. But I think it would be a movie that I would recommend to somebody, but in my heart of hearts, I would have no idea what they were going to make of it. But try it.
Yeah. Yeah, no. What did you think of that sort of last transformation scene with, obviously the person who's supposed to be the big bad wolf from Red Riding Hood, comes home and is beaten and rejected by our Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
And that whole sequence, what did you think of that one?
Well, in going back to the first story that's told, where the guy goes into the woods and he is bitten and he becomes the monster, it seems less inherent that he is. The at the end, this is more of a traditional he is a monster, but pitiable.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Not in necessarily the Frankenstein's monster sense, but just that would be a bad place if your head was always locked in its worst possible spot, And if I hadn't mentioned before, like, the special effects are very strong, especially for 1984. This is all practically achieved, and it's not a low budget, but a lower end budget for what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
So... specifically the sequence you're talking about, I get what they're going for, and it's not that the roles were reversed, but the power's reversed.
I thought that was also an interesting angle for the story, or at least that element of the story. I love the fact that she turns into wolf at the end and breaks the window. To me, that sort of signals that she has officially lost her innocence and is ready for adulthood.
But she also seems a wolf possessed of its own agency. She's not snarling and rabid necessarily.
Yeah,
she doesn't seem like a monster. She seems like
like a wolf.
A wolf.
Yes. So
good enough.
Good enough.
In this old castle, death is the youngest thing alive, for it is born and reborn 13 times. Each time from a different dementia. A miasma of madness hides the one who delivers death, one who walks with silent tread and strikes with ruthless force. Is it the mother, demented by grief, or the attentive daughter-in-law, whose voice is soothingly hypnotic?
She'll tell me. I promise you.
Is it the son, who with fire creates beauty? Or the doctor who can cure and kill? Or perhaps the new bride, tortured by the ever-present nearness of death? Know the frenzy of a wedding night, in which a marriage is consummated, in a passion of terror. You too will be mesmerized by a world that cannot be, but is. The mystery of the enigmatic leads to a strange rendezvous. An attempted escape, a meeting with terror.
It's 1963, and Francis Ford Coppola is sort of a go-to gopher, handy guy, playing multiple different roles in the, Roger Corman pictures all over the place. And he wants to direct, and he's done a few skin pixie things.
And he was coming up in the...
He's earning his place where he can maybe get a movie. Yeah. And so Corman gives him one, but there's a substantial but, right? He's got a very tight schedule, and he's got 2 fixed locations. I believe it was the pond and the manor, the house, and whatever amount of days that they had to shoot it. So
their money was left over from this other film that they had made.
On top of making this movie incredibly cheaply from an already incredibly cheap production company, they would have had to have been making this movie at a dead run.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And, Quick and Dirty is how they do it. I think they shot these old cheap horror movies the way people sort of shoot serialized television these days, right? It's just, go team, let's not be precious, not multiple takes.
Yeah.
We know what we're doing, make these choices.
Yeah.
So when you watch Dementia 13,
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see like, oh yeah, this is the guy who's going to bring us The Godfather.
Yeah,
and
no, this is his
us
first
The
movie, I think.
This is a guy doing the best he can with a pretty lousy hand.
Yeah,
and
you can't help but root for the film and then in that
exactly.
regard. Yeah,
that's what I'm. In the end of the day, I don't think it's a great movie.
Yeah,
but I kind of like. It's got an underdog quality to it.
Yeah.
He was dealt a lame hand, and he stayed in the game as long as he possibly could.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff in the movie was like so, as Roger Corman was happily and probably instructing him to do, ripped off from other movies.
Well, it's a ripoff of Psycho, really.
Directly.
Yeah.
Like we establish with a main character and she gets killed like a third of the way into the movie and we've lost our main character and shit. And if, it hadn't just happened 3 years ago in Psycho, the audience could get really excited about that. But
I do have to say I really love that opening act of this movie, the sort of setup. It's sort of how our character scaffolds into this very crazy family. That opening scene with the boat with her husband, where clearly this marriage is not one born out of love.
No.
They're even having a conversation of "you better not double cross me" or
it's on the nose writing, and again, I attribute that to the speed with which it is being written.
Yeah, and then fate intervenes, and this guy has a heart attack, and all his pills are gone.
They're not giving each other dialogue. They're telling each other the story of the movie, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing natural about their exchanges.
Yeah.
And like he says, if I die, you'll get nothing, and then instantly dies of a heart attack.
Yeah.
Like it's just like on the nose doesn't say it.
Yeah.
And I guess it's sort of pleasing and charming in that way. But I 100% agree with you. I think that I'm with the movie until she dies.
Okay.
And then I think that the movie drops a significant degree in quality, and then towards the end it drops again.
Sure. Okay.
I think it gets less good as we're going.
Yeah, I'll give it that. Yeah.
So our main character, let's get this up in front of me. Our would-be main character, Louise Halloran, wants to...
You can't say it in an Italian sort of way.
I could if I wanted to. She is clearly like a femme fatale.
Yes.
And not as redeemable as the femme fatale that Psycho presents us with, in which in that case she steals some money but feels conflicted about it.
No, she's definitely...
like, who can I ingratiate myself with and who can I manipulate so that my life can
She's a con artist.
Yeah. And, it's hard to cheer for her, but this is who's steering the plot until she's axed out of it. But as much as I knew that she was conniving, I was sort of waiting to see how she was going to get her comeuppance. Yeah. And I didn't have to wait the 75 minutes. I only had to wait 15.
Well, she manipulated herself into her own doom in a lot of ways.
In
a lot of ways, in that way, very much.
The family she's met, her husband's family, she's lied and said is out of a way.
Yeah.
They have this bizarre ritual to pay honor to the lost daughter.
Yeah.
The two brothers and the mother gather around this pond and then do this pantomime mourning, and she throws herself into a tizzy and basically collapses from the grief.
Yeah.
And they make a point of doing this every year. Yeah. So clearly she's psychologically fragile.
Yeah.
Clearly this is the backstory why. This is what she's going to use to make the poor, grieved mother believe that the daughter wants this woman to be part of the family and somehow get the fortune.
Yeah.
So she strips down into her sexy 60s bra and undies and swims down into the pond, gets spooked by seeing the somehow pickled body or the doll.
It's a doll all set up by the killer.
Yeah. So she kind of swims to the shore in shock. What is she going to do? And lo and behold, she's killed.
Yep.
And therefore, like I said, that's where everything interesting in the movie stops for me. The investigator that we get to meet, I think, is ham-handed, both in his execution and in the script.
Mm-hmm.
The two brothers, who are the only two active other suspects that we have, because in this day and age, I guess the Axeling mother figure was pretty easy to cross off the list.
Yeah.
It's not quite like a 3-person murder mystery, but there's nothing complicated from that point on in the movie. It's just waiting for the inevitable resolve. And the climax doesn't have any kind of big heightened payoff. It's one of those cheesy 60s gunfire deaths where he's shot and he staggers and it's almost a Shatner-ish death in the way it plays out. And it's like the big moment of the movie.
Yeah.
So how I get around to liking the movie is to like where we started. It's just like, well, he made this in 10 days, and he didn't know he was making that movie probably like a week before he started shooting it. I did a play with my friend Rob Reynolds, who's been on the show, called Creeping Zombie Insanity.
Yep.
But we got our slot in the Fringe, and we had like 6 weeks or something to write, direct, and act in this play. And I kind of feel about Creeping Zombie Insanity as how I feel about Dementia 13. It's not my greatest piece of work, but for something put together on the fly at a dead run, produced and put up on its feet, shag-assed as it is, for that it's interesting. But like we said at the introduction of this episode, I think this is a movie for completists of Coppola, or for someone who's like a student of film and who can sort of get around the corners of this movie. At this day and age, in 2019, who would I recommend other than that Dementia 13? I can think of no one.
Yeah, no, this is for movie nerds and completists only. This is the kind of movie that I think on a different day I would have easily hated, but I was in the mood for a schlocky, Hitchcockian rip-off, old thriller-style film. So I caught it on a very, very good day.
Right.
There was that one actor who looked a lot like Tom Noonan. That was the other thing I was...
Oh, yeah. I thought that, too. That's interesting.
But I've seen that actor before. Do you remember his name?
I don't.
Yeah, anyways. Yeah. The entire time it was distracting. I'm like, that's a young Tom Noonan. Like, I know it's not Tom Noonan, but
it could be.
Yes. Anyways. Dementia 13. It's... I don't know. It's a lot of fun.
Here's my other thing that I would ask you, because I think I hear us making excuses in ingratiation of the movie, but because it's made by Coppola and it comes out of Corman, we know all of this trivia about the movie.
Yeah.
Imagine we didn't, and imagine it wasn't directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
Mm-hmm.
Would you and I be making excuses for it?
We'd be making fun of it, probably.
We'd probably be harder on it. We might not be terrible of it, but I think that says something too.
Yep, absolutely.
1 week from tonight, she's young, beautiful, successful, and has everything to live for. But someone wants her dead.
Hello?
I'll find you. I don't give up.
Lauren Hutton, David Burney, and Adrienne Barbeau star in a chilling tale of suspense and terror. A twisted maniac is at large. Can he be stopped before it's too late? Someone's watching me next Wednesday on NBC.
The review's so nice, we're doing it twice.
There you go. Well, first of all, Parsons, I personally want to thank you so much for actually getting a 1980s song in my head. I know that was not your original intention, but when I read to do the list and there was this title and I was Googling it, the first thing that came up was Rockwell, Someone's Watching Me. And ever since that moment, every day, I sing that song.
Yeah,
I sing
believe
that song.
Somebody's watching me, technically, and the movie is technically called Someone's
Watching Me. We're doing the whole grammar now.
Well, I'm just saying.
Is it present continuous? Is it past participle?
There are two different titles there.
Okay.
They're not the same title.
Fine.
That's all I'm saying.
Fine.
But I don't mind getting 80s songs stuck in your head. I remember I had like... Suzanne Vega
that is like
song in my head for like 2
Tom's
years.
Diner.
Yeah, I am sure I had that song stuck in my head for 2 fucking years.
Yeah, I think that song would rank pretty high and probably the most annoyingly hypnotic song ever.
Earworm.
Yeah, just wow. Yeah, it took forever to get Tom's Diner out of my head.
And now that I made you think about it, you're stuck with it again.
You have rewoken a psychosis.
None of that, of course, has anything to do with Someone's Watching Me, the 1978 John Carpenter picture. In 1978, John Carpenter made 3 films.
He did.
Was incredibly active and busy. He made the Elvis Presley biopic with Kurt Russell. He made this movie, and then he followed it up like almost immediately. 3 weeks after they finished production on this, he did this Halloween movie, which was going to change his
Never
career.
heard of it, yeah.
It was going to change his career forever.
Yeah.
And at the risk of repeating myself, Mr. Beckmann,
yeah.
I think anybody could come into this movie and find stuff to enjoy. It's a stalker thriller movie. But I think if you're a fan of Carpenter, and particularly a fan of Halloween, I can absolutely, with no reservations, recommend this movie to you. Carpenter completeness is absolutely genre fans to taste.
Yeah.
It's very 70s, and it is made for television.
Yeah. Do you remember when ABC and CBS used to do these sort of TV movies of the week? They might play like Thursday nights and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
It's of that caliber and quality.
Yeah.
So, but that's okay.
That's fine.
That's
Lauren
okay.
Hutton plays Lee Michaels.
Great name.
She's a TV director. She's moved from New York to Los Angeles. She's living in a high-rise apartment.
Yeah.
On her very first day, we see that this dude with a telescope has spotted her. And we already know from the pre-credit sequence he's bad news. And the film is basically a very, very familiar derivative, even stalker movie.
Yeah.
It's added more color because John Carpenter has written some interesting characters into it, and because we can see his style sort of start to take shape. But because they had to be careful with the content and be a little bit more reserved in what they were doing for TV, he wasn't relying on the shock tactics to get the scares. And this is exactly the mentality that he's going to end up bringing into Halloween. And I would posit that maybe he wouldn't have brought that mentality into it if it wasn't for someone's watching me.
It is entirely possible. It is entirely possible.
So that's where I start on it. As a fan of Carpenter, I find this movie very interesting.
Yeah.
As a horror movie fan, it's clearly kind of middle of the road. Where do you land on someone's watching?
Overall, I kind of like it. I mean, I immediately accepted that we're going to have this sort of TV movie style aesthetic or early structure, and we're going to be playing and I knew we were playing with Rear Window, which I think is one of the most classic thrillers. And there's some typical Carpenter consistencies or techniques that we see early on, and specific shot sequences. Carpenter's also very good, especially in the beginning, with objects either good in the foreground or background that become a part of the scene or a way to sort of carry the narrative along through. We see it in Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis and the telephone. We see it here with Lauren Hutton, who's a very spunky character as well.
Yeah.
Incorporated here as one way to sort of continue the story in someone's watching me. So his style of building suspense is definitely honed in here as well. We see it. What did you think of the whole greater scene, the scene where she's being chased in the garage? I think initially, the laundromat,
right?
And she hides in the grate.
Yeah, she avoids him, and we get her perspective on it. I mean, I wouldn't lie.
Do you think do you think he knows that she's underneath?
I didn't think so. I mean, I think he enjoys the game.
Yes,
she doesn't, and this is part of the game.
Yes, absolutely. It's part of the hunt and chase.
But
so you don't think he knows that she's underneath?
At least in this viewing, I didn't assume.
Okay.
I didn't make that assumption.
Okay.
But
it was one of those things that the scene was clearly asking you whether or not they're doing the whole hunter-prey sequence.
Right. But it's too early in the movie for us to be scared, and for her, I think. And I don't think they're going to pull a psycho at this point, and we're going to suddenly change characters. So just through where we are in the narrative, it's just too early for one or the other to destroy the other, right?
Yeah.
We were talking too about how crazily different the entire world seems to be in 1978.
Yeah.
It's not unrecognizable, but it almost seems like a cruel satire of itself at times.
Yeah.
Like, the workplace behavior of everyone is terrible. And it's just played as common. This is how shit is.
Yeah, the two women should get an award for just surviving the sheer amount of sexual harassment that goes on.
That they
in the
laugh
and
shrug off.
It's like those are just men, but whew,
First day she's there,
Yeah.
she's hit on by this guy. He asks her out. She says no fairly politely, and he basically lets her know, well, I'm going to bug you about
because
this
I always
until it
get
happens, right?
what I want.
I get what I want.
Yeah.
The Adrian Barbeau character, who I believe was either engaged to or about to become engaged to John Carpenter, she plays the lesbian character.
Yes.
And
the tokenism is very funny.
She feels it's very necessary to remind everybody that she's a
lesbian
as much
here,
as possible.
lesbian. Yeah, I know.
And at the time, you didn't see this character that often, so it was like kind of nice that there was any kind of inclusion and mention of it, but it is handled sloppily.
They even have this scene. I'm so glad we can be friends. I mean, I know I'm a lesbian, and when it's so bad.
Social conventions dictate that we're not allowed to be friends with our differing sexualities.
But I know.
But as I keep on saying, at the time they meant well.
Inclusion writer. Yeah. I get it.
And she is the lesbian character who reminds us that she's a lesbian throughout the movie, and she gets killed. It's like every single horror movie fail cliche convention about homosexual characters.
Yeah.
But it was 1978.
I get it.
And as the movie keeps reminding us, it was a very fucking different time.
Yeah, like really. There was this great article I read explaining about, trying to understand like the Me Too movement and all the sort of sexual harassment, but getting it through to guys. And he said, imagine living in a society where everyone wants to punch you in the balls. And I always thought that's a great sort of mentality, metaphor for how to sort of explain it for men. What's it like being a woman in a very dominated hierarchy world, patriarchal world, if you will. And if you stop and you think about it, like the journey of these two women, take the whole, even incorporating like the stalker, it's like a lot of the guys in this movie really want to sleep with these women and behave badly towards them.
All of the men are stalkers to some degree.
Yeah.
This guy is just taking it to some next level bullshit.
So can you imagine if the whole society is like wanting to like punch you right in the groin area?
Yeah, you would be scared to go outside.
Exactly.
It is interesting, and it is interesting looking at it from where we are now. Because none of this stuff I don't think would occur to you if you were watching it when it aired on television.
No, I know. I mean, different time, different social morals. I get it. Yeah.
It's also interesting because at the time there was no law about stalking specifically. There was no way to deal with a stalker.
This was loosely based off a true story, and so
in Chicago or something, I think. Yeah. But if you had this dude who was following you around everywhere, and you went to the police and you said, "This dude's following me everywhere," they'd basically say, "I don't tell you, lady, it's a free country." Right? Yeah. Boys will be boys. And it's just going to escalate, and sooner or later it's going to get ugly, and the police aren't going to show up except to draw a chalk line around your fucking corpse, right?
Well, we should have done something then.
It almost makes me want to set a movie in the 70s to explore the helplessness of that scenario. Because, and again, when you watch that in 78, you just accepted it as the status quo. It's fucked.
Woof.
And then I go back again to my love for Carpenter, because you and I have done some pretty deep dick Carpenter stuff here. So
if I could, I would have his tattooed to my belly.
we like Carpenter because it's on television.
Yeah.
You can tell that the movie wants to have nudity, but they show a lot of lady back because that's all they can get away with, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the movie wants to be a little bit more violent than it is. Mm-hmm. So how does he get around it? When the Adrian Barbeau character is killed, we see it at a great distance. Mm-hmm. Which for us, because we like that gay character, makes it kind of worse. So you got to fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
He's going to do that again when we come to Halloween. Yeah. Like you mentioned, when we see that the killer blows past her in the background inside the apartment. He's in the apartment. Mm-hmm. We know it. She doesn't.
Yeah.
The next movie, Michael Myers wakes up, and he's behind Laurie Strode, and he's alive, and he's right there. But she doesn't say, again, the groundwork is here.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to get behind the very familiar slasher movie, there's nothing about the stalker movie, there's nothing about this that's going to surprise you. Yeah. She makes a friend, the friend dies, there's a climactic fight, How does the killer die? Take a guess. It's set in a high rise.
He's thrown.
He falls to his death.
Yeah, balcony.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
So if you get off on watching that kind of movie, this is another one of them. I watch it for that. If you like Carpenter, it's a really worth.
Good to see Charlie Cyphers in this movie as well.
Yeah, his regular player in there.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of these calling cards that we'll see from Carpenter. It's weird, and I think it's because it was made for TV that they just delegate it. If you're the director, that's a big enough job. The Carpenter score is missing here. And that kind of stands out just because it's such a big part of the Carpenter aesthetic. I know he didn't score all of his movies, but most of them.
That's one of the sort of attributes of when you think Carpenter, there's that specific sound.
And that is missing here, but it feels Carpenter if it doesn't sound Carpenter, and that's good enough for me.
Because someone's watching me.
Well, it wasn't easy back then. What we got through this episode has been there's been a lot of strange obstacles. Like, not in that there's been anything other than ourselves getting in our way here. But
it's been a frustrating process.
It feels like we're a couple of novice podcasters, and this is like our first gig in the can.
Yeah.
But it's not. So I think that not only did we do service to these movies, but we somehow kind of started to emulate them through our performance here. So
I'd be curious to see how this is when we listen to this.
It's not our best work.
I'm almost afraid even.
It's not our best work, but I bet you it'll make me laugh at least. And if this sucked balls, I apologize, you guys.
I'm more disappointed in myself. I felt like I didn't bring my A game, so I don't know.
So it's a strange mixed bag of movies. It's yet another director.
And it's a strange mixed bag of an episode. So.
And strange directors, strange movies, strange mix. What was your least favorite of this collection, and why?
Well, I don't think it's going to be a shock that the Wes Craven terrible-tastic Deadly Friend is at number 6. It's not Wes's fault. It's just, the producers, they got scared and they created a thematic mess of a movie. I do sort of think, though, that this thing was doomed from the start. It may look good on paper, but the execution of it. And that Anne Ramsey basketball scene. Perfection.
Not enough to recommend that to anybody.
You know what? I'm going to say even I'm BB. So, anyways, number 6, Deadly Friend. This is where I think this is going to be, I don't know. I'm going to put number 5, I Have the Hand by Oliver Stone.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a fascinating movie, and I know it had such a ludicrous idea. I was thinking of maybe putting Dementia 13 in this, but I don't know. It's good.
Okay.
Number 5, I have number 5, The Hand. Number 4, I have Dementia 13. I sort of went over with the charm of it. I mean, I know it's not a good movie, and I do sort of think I was in the right mood to sort of see this thing.
It's a nerd movie.
I do love the setup, though.
Yeah,
great setup. At number 3, I have Piranha 2. Once again, a movie so bad it's good. I hesitate to say directed by James Cameron. It's more witnessed by, but Asimo, I didn't, whatever his name. I'm not going to start this again.
You're fired.
You're fired, okay? I can't speak Italian, all right? It's my Western twang. Don't judge me. Number 3, Piranha 2, The Spawning. Now, number 2, Someone's Watching Me. This is Baby Carpenter, but I think it's really well made. If you can get past the whole it's made for TV kind of production values of it, I thought it was a pretty compelling story.
Yeah.
And at number 1, I have The Company of Wolves, a very interesting horror tale, horror fable, if you will.
Right.
I often thought the Red Riding Hood story would be make a great werewolf movie, but time's proven me wrong.
They keep trying.
But anyways, the very interesting and thematic The Company of Wolves.
Controversial, unpopular opinion that you'll likely disagree with. Sure. I know you don't like the movie as much as I do.
Yeah.
The best modern take on Red Riding Hood. Freeway. Anyway, it's surprisingly different lists, but I don't think we're gonna fight about this because it's hard to get too passionate.
Yeah.
But we're definitely gonna agree at the bottom.
Okay.
Deadly Friend is not the case of a movie that is so bad it's good.
Yeah.
It's so bad that I'm embarrassed for everybody involved.
Yeah.
It's one of these movies that probably shouldn't have made the transition from VHS to DVD. The fact that Wes Craven made it is the only reason it's still in circulation. It is one of the worst movies I've ever reviewed for this podcast.
Really?
Especially by a serious director anyway.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's not so bad it's good. I know that his head explodes when it gets hit by a basketball.
Yeah.
But that's 3 seconds of this 92-minute movie.
Yeah,
and
it's
not worth it.
to take.
Go to YouTube. You can find the scene if you must.
Yeah.
But yes, number 6, easily, with no real competition, a wide lead in the bottom for Deadly Friend.
Yeah.
But I did put Dementia 13 in the 5th place.
Interesting. I wonder if you would.
Even at 75 minutes, it felt like a little bit like homework, more than a lot of the other movies did. By the time I got to it. Again, I think it's a nerdy film movie. It's this is what Francis Ford Coppola looked like in 63.
I was taken in by the first sort of opening story and how it connected with the crazy family, so.
And it does have that sort of cheesy slasher aesthetic.
Yeah.
And it's harsh but tame by today's standards, but at the time it came in, it was probably considered kind of rough. You're seeing women in their underwear and they're getting killed by axes. But today, no. In 4th place, Oliver Stone's The Hand.
This is where
they play it straight-faced, but it's ludicrous. Mm-hmm. It kind of works, but it kind of doesn't. It's just at war with itself.
Yeah.
But they tried. So, again, if you're a fan of Oliver Stone and you want to see what an Oliver Stone, quote, horror movie looks like, then why not? All the way in 3rd place, which seems artificially high, Piranha 2, The Spawning. Not because I think it's such a great movie, but because I just enjoy the sleazy aesthetic of it and the goofy awkwardness of it. And because it's a killer fish movie.
You're articulating it better than I did, yeah.
It's just more to my... I like what this movie wants to be.
Yes.
And it's a kind of movie that doesn't really get made anymore unless it's a statement on it.
Well, Cameron once said it's the best flying fish movie ever. I have to agree.
I haven't seen a better one.
Yeah.
I put Company of Wolves in 2nd place.
Interesting.
Just because it falls somewhere between aesthetic brilliance and interpretive nightmare. It's about everything and nothing, and it's interesting, and it's sort of it's a little bit all over the place, but hard to forget, but forgettable. There's all sorts of contrasts.
I like the big swings they were taking, and it's to me, I sort of took it as a more not meta-philosophical horror movie. They're talking really the evil is toxic masculinity.
It's the nicest looking, most ambitious of the movies that I think we've talked about. But the hardcore John Carpenter fanboy in me kind of got off of some of the inside baseball that I saw in someone's watching me, and as a fan of Carpenter, like I could really get more out of the movie than I think somebody who was just watching it as a straight stalker movie would. It would be
got some Carpenter prejudice, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, no,
to anyone else in the world, it's another fairly industry standard stalker movie. To a Carpenter fan, we sort of see him honing his craft and about to launch on one of the best sort of genre film careers that I can think of.
Yep.
Who competes with Carpenter? I put him in number one.
Yeah.
For the record, it was a near thing.
Yeah. No. And I agree
I
with
don't
you.
think we're going to fight.
No, I think our lists are... Yeah, our lists are actually weirdly close. It's interesting because like 4 and 5, I could have gone either way. So either way, so our lists almost would have the same. Yeah. But you put Company of Wolves at number 2. Yeah. Interesting.
And if you're a werewolf person, the boozies of the world out there,
Boozy would totally dig this movie.
Yeah. If you want to see if you'll watch a movie because it's got an awesome werewolf in it, for fucking sure.
Check it out, Boozy.
Yeah. Interesting episode. Strange movies.
Yeah.
If they were a superhero super team, they'd be the unessentials, right?
Yeah.
But thank you, movie nerds out there, for bearing with us through this episode. And I'm sorry if we were both a little bit broken today, but I guess we're...
Broken is such a harsh, dramatic word.
We're in a weird headspace, and it's infected the podcast, and for good or ill, here it is.
Oh, I just want to say one last thing. Is it Juergens is his name?
Oh, yes, Eric Juergens?
Yeah, suck it, Juergens. You're not getting the crown. That's so rude of me. Oh.
Right in the feelings.
I know it. I love him, Juergens. It's just great. You're just not getting this crown.
And here endeth the lesson on the Inessential Director Masterclass. I mean, there was value to be had in watching these movies, but it's definitely for us real hardcore cineasts. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you continue to listen to Rank and Review. Send me your feedback at rankandreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. Check out the website at rankandreview.ca because I'm from Canada. And if you enjoy this podcast, consider checking out the Terror Table Cast. They're another group that work within my community, and I think they have a great show. So please check them out. As always, I am your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons. And thank you so much for listening to my podcast.